Hi, beautiful souls. Thank you for being here today. Your time, your presence, your support, it means more than words can express. Every like, every comment, every share, and every moment you spend with these stories keeps this journey alive. So settle in, relax, and enjoy, because this one was made just for you. Las Vegas shimmered under 1,000 neon lights, each one pulsing like a beating heart, louder, faster, brighter than anything Charles Douglas felt inside himself. Crowds surged in waves along the strip, laughter echoing, slot machines chiming, glasses clinking, drunk promises being made under the warm desert night. It was the city where people escaped their lives. Charles wasn't escaping anything. He was drowning in it. He stepped out of the Douglas Tower, his family's empire wrapped in glass and silver, and felt a tightness in his chest he couldn't quite breathe past. His father's voice still clung to him like smoke. "You're 35, Charles. You've worked your entire life building this company. But a man who refuses to build a family cannot inherit one." The words burned hotter than the neon sun. Douglas Sr. had always been harsh, always demanding, always pushing. But tonight wasn't about performance. It wasn't about deals or markets or mergers. Tonight his father had looked him in the eye and stripped him bare. "You want the empire? Settle down. Have your own children. Build the legacy. Until then, you'll live on salary like every other employee. An employee, not an heir. Not the son who had sacrificed everything. Relationships, youth, rest, in loyalty to the dynasty. He'd spent years working 18-hour days, pouring blood and sweat into the same empire his father now said he was, unworthy of continuing. He felt like someone had punched a hole into his chest and left it open. Charles loosened his tie, the crisp fabric suddenly suffocating. He wasn't a man who cried, but tonight he felt the burn behind his eyes, quiet, sharp, humiliating. He walked into the nearest casino bar, needing the noise to drown out the silence inside him. The room glowed gold and red, velvet seats, polished marble, chandeliers dancing with reflections. He ordered a drink, something strong, something that tasted like nothing, and sat alone at the bar. He didn't speak. He didn't look up. He didn't want to be seen. But someone saw him anyway. Rachel Anderson felt the tequila hit her bloodstream like a firework. She leaned heavily on her best friend Lisa as they pushed through the crowded casino. Half drunk, half laughing, heels clicking too loud and too clumsy on the marble floor. Tonight wasn't her idea. Heartbreak never was. 1 month ago, she'd caught her ex with someone else. Another designer, someone cheap with sweetness and lies. Rachel had walked away from the relationship, not the pain. That part stayed, heavy as wet sand inside her ribs. Lisa, determined to revive her, had declared, "Tonight we drink for freedom, for healing, for fine men and bad decisions." Rachel protested. Then she drank anyway. "You're staring again," Lisa said, poking her cheek with a perfectly manicured finger. "I'm not staring," Rachel muttered. Lisa snorted. "Las Vegas should tax your lies." Rachel let herself laugh, the sound small but real. Maybe the tequila softened more than her edges. Maybe she needed this night more than she would ever admit. They squeezed into the bar and pressed against a long counter of glass and gold. That was when Lisa slammed her empty glass down and smirked with wicked delight. "I dare you," she said. Rachel groaned. "Oh God, here we go." "I dare you to kiss." Lisa paused dramatically, scanning the room, the first cold. "Handsome man, you see." Rachel burst into laughter. "No, absolutely not." Why would then Rachel saw him? A man sitting alone, shoulders broad under a tailored suit, head lowered as if the world weighed on him. His jawline was sharp, shadowed with slight stubble. His eyes pale, piercing, unreadable, lifted for only a second, and she felt her breath stutter. He was handsome, yes, but more than that. He looked lost, cold, carved from loneliness. Charles Douglas. Her pulse jumped. Lisa grinned. "Perfect, go, go, go before I drag you myself." Rachel shook her head so hard her curls bounced. Lisa, absolutely, but the tequila had diluted her fear, and heartbreak had numbed her judgment. And something about the man at the bar made her feel safe. No, not safe, drawn. And suddenly she found herself walking toward him. He didn't notice her at first. He stared down at his drink like he was trying to find something inside it. She stopped in front of him, heartbeat stumbling. He slowly raised his eyes. Their gazes collided. Something warm and electric shivered up her spine. Before she could think, Before she could breathe, before she could ask herself what in the world she was doing, she leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't a messy, drunken kiss. It wasn't clumsy. It was soft, bare, unexpected. His lips were warm. His breath tasted of whiskey and heartbreak. And Charles, devastated, silent, drowning in the weight of his father's words, froze. Then something inside him cracked open. Something he had forgotten he could feel. He kissed her back. Not deeply, not possessively, but with a quiet hunger, like a man who had been cold his whole life and suddenly found warmth. She pulled away, cheeks flushed, dizzy with shock. "Sorry," she whispered. Charles shook his head slowly. "Don't be." His voice was low, stunningly gentle. Rachel's heart fluttered, and she quickly returned to Lisa, who exploded in squeals and laughter. But Charles couldn't stop watching her, couldn't stop replaying the kiss, couldn't stop wondering why a stranger felt like the only steady thing in a world, collapsing around him. Hours passed. Drinks flowed. The casino blurred into a world of noise and glitter. Lisa grew louder, Rachel softer, and Charles stayed on his stool, occasionally glancing their way and catching Rachel laughing, cheeks glowing, curls bouncing as she tried to keep Lisa from falling off a chair. He didn't mean to care. He didn't mean to notice. But he did. When the night winded down, Rachel and Lisa were far too drunk to stand, let alone drive. Lisa stumbled against a slot machine, giggling like a child. Rachel rubbed her eyes. "We should call an Uber." "Absolutely not." She turned and found Charles standing behind her, hands in his pockets, gaze softened. "It's not safe," he said calmly. "Let me drive you home." Rachel blinked. "You don't have to. I want to." Something in his voice made her nod. Maybe the sincerity, maybe the exhaustion, maybe the fact that for a man who looked so intimidating, his eyes were kind tonight. He led them to his sleek black car, opened the doors, made sure they were buckled in. Lisa fell asleep within seconds. Rachel leaned her head on the window, blinking at the glittering lights of Vegas streaking past. Charles glanced at her. "Rough night?" "Rough month," she whispered. "Yeah," he said softly. "Same." Silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable, not distant, just gentle. Rachel's eyes fluttered. "You looked sad tonight." Charles swallowed. "I was." He didn't say more, but she could feel the weight of his pain filling the space like a quiet storm. For a fleeting moment, she wished she could soothe it. They reached her apartment. Charles carried Lisa up the stairs effortlessly. He walked Rachel to her door, and in the dim hallway light he looked almost unreal. Too handsome, too stoic, too fragile beneath his cold aura. She tucked a curl behind her ear. "Thank you for tonight." He nodded. "Get some rest." She smiled softly before slipping inside. Charles stood there for a moment, staring at the closed door, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Alive. He walked back to his car with the ghost of her kiss on his lips. The world seemed different, lighter, louder, more dangerous. He lay awake that night, staring at his ceiling, replaying every second. The kiss, her laugh, her eyes, the way she looked at him like he was a man, not a billionaire. He whispered into the quiet, "Who are you?" And something inside him answered, "She is the first thing that has made you feel anything in a long, long time." Charles closed his eyes, knowing one truth with startling clarity. He had to see her again. He didn't know why. He didn't know how. But he knew he couldn't let the night end where it ended. He had to find her, no matter what it cost. Morning light spilled into Rachel's tiny apartment, warm and golden, but her head pounded like someone had set fireworks off inside her skull. She groaned into her pillow, still dressed from the night before, still smelling faintly of perfume and tequila and bad decisions. Lisa was dead asleep on the couch, half hanging off the cushions like a broken mannequin. Rachel dragged herself up, stumbling into the kitchen for water. Images from last night rushed back in sharp, messy flashes. The casino lights, Lisa's wicked dare, her own reckless walk toward that devastatingly handsome stranger. The kiss, oh God! She slapped a hand over her eyes. What on earth had she been thinking? She kissed a stranger, no, a cold, intimidating, ridiculously gorgeous man who looked like he ate problems for breakfast. And she didn't just kiss him. She kissed him like she meant it. Heat rushed to her cheeks. "Why am I like this?" she whispered to the empty room. She poured water, tried to breathe, tried to piece her dignity back together. Then a knock, soft, firm, Too early to be real. She froze. No one knocked on her door at 9 in the morning. Another knock, this time deeper, more patient. Her pulse kicked. "Lisa," she whispered, shaking her friend. "Somebody's at the door." Lisa rolled over, mumbling for them to go away. Rachel tiptoed to the peephole and her breath vanished. Standing outside her door in a crisp, dark suit, looking taller, stronger, heartbreakingly composed, was him, Charles Douglas. Her heart tried to escape her chest. She opened the door slowly. "Hi." He looked at her. Really looked, and something softened in his eyes. "You look like you're surviving." "I think that's generous." He almost smiled. It was the smallest curve of his lips, but it hit her like a warm breeze. "Can we talk?" he asked gently. Rachel blinked. Yes. Sure, come in." Charles stepped inside, taking in her small living room. Her sketches scattered on the table, rolls of fabric on the floor, her fashion portfolio leaning against a chair. The space looked lived in, creative, warm, unlike him. His world was polished steel and cold marble. This felt like life. Rachel crossed her arms, embarrassed. "Sorry for the mess. And for last night. And for kissing you. And you don't have to apologize." She blinked. "I kinda do." "No," Charles said softly. "It was unforgettable." Her stomach flipped. He cleared his throat, suddenly nervous, and she noticed that Charles Douglas, with his billionaire aura and tense jawline, was anxious. "I didn't come here to make things awkward," he said. "I actually need a favor." Rachel frowned. "A favor?" "That kiss last night. You don't know what it did." Her heart skipped. "Charles, if this is about—" "It gave me an idea," he said quickly. "One that could solve a very big problem for me." She leaned back against the wall, unsure where this was going. Charles inhaled slowly. "I want you to pretend to be my fiancé." Silence crashed into the room. Rachel stared at him. "You what?" "It's temporary," he added. 3 months. She pressed a hand to her forehead. "Charles, is this a joke?" "No, not at all." "Why?" "Because my father believes I'm incapable of settling down. He won't let me inherit the company until I prove I'm on the path to having a family." He exhaled sharply. "And you last night felt real." "It looked real." Rachel shook her head. "You met me once. I kissed you because I was dared. I was drunk." "And yet," he said quietly, "it felt honest." Her cheeks heated. "And besides," he added, a smirk ghosting his lips, "you don't know it, but you saved me last night. I went home and, for the first time in months, I didn't feel like a shadow." Rachel's breath tangled. But then the reality hit her. "Charles, this sounds like a lot." "Like a whole lot, I know." His voice dropped into something raw. "But I need this. You'd be helping me reclaim the life I built." Rachel crossed her arms. "And what do I get?" Charles raised his eyes to hers. "Name your price." Her heart hammered. "I don't want money, then what?" She swallowed. "My ex. I want him to see that I'm not broken. That someone like you chooses someone like me." Charles stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Then that's exactly what you'll get." Their eyes met. Something electric flickered between them. Dangerous, warm, unspoken. 3 months, she whispered. 3 months, he echoed. The agreement formed quietly, naturally, like the universe had already written it. 3 months, no attachment. No lines crossed, just pretend. But from the moment they shook hands, nothing felt pretend at all. The first public event was a charity gala. Crowded, glamorous, blinding with flash photography. Charles took her hand as they stepped out of the car. It was supposed to be for show, but the warmth of his palm slid through her like heat. "You okay?" he murmured. "I should be asking you that," she whispered. "You're the one risking your inheritance." He glanced at her, something dark and soft moving in his gaze. "The only thing I'm risking is the line between what's pretend and what I keep forgetting isn't real." Her breath stilled. Inside the gala, they moved like they had always moved together. His hand brushing her back while guiding her through the crowd. Her fingers brushing his wrist, when he leaned down to whisper a joke she wasn't expecting. They laughed too easily. They touched too naturally, and everyone noticed, especially her ex, standing across the room, jaw tight, eyes fixed on Charles's arm, wrapped possessively around her waist. Charles leaned down, lips grazing the shell of her ear. "He's looking." A shiver ran down her spine. "Good. Would you like him to look harder?" His voice was slow, deep, dangerously intimate. She was trembling now. "Do what you need to do." Charles turned her gently. tilting her chin with one finger. Acting, but not acting at all. Rachel, if this ever feels too real. It already does, she breathed. He froze for half a second, then kissed her forehead for the photographers, a surprisingly tender gesture that made her chest ache. The days blurred into a rhythm of slow-burning tension neither of them dared touch. Late-night strategy meetings that ended in soft laughter, fake dates that felt real, dinners where their knees brushed under the table and neither moved away. He fantasized about her, her lips, the curve of her waist, the warmth of her voice when she said his name. He hated himself for it. She wasn't his. Not really. She fantasized, too, about his hands on her hips, his body pressed against hers, his mouth tracing the line of her neck. She hated herself for wanting something she wasn't allowed to have. And yet they kept going, pretending, falling, pretending not to fall. One night everything cracked. They were in his penthouse, the lights low, city glowing beneath them. Charles sat beside her on the couch, tie loosened, exhaustion dragging down his shoulders. "I poured my entire life into that empire," he murmured, voice low. "And yet somehow he thinks I'm not ready, not steady enough, not complete. But when I'm with you, I don't feel inadequate. I feel like myself." She didn't say anything. Instead, she leaned into him, resting her head against his shoulder. His breath hitched. "You don't have to be strong right now," she murmured. Something in him broke. He let his head fall lightly against hers, eyes closing, breathing her in like she was the first calm he had in decades. Minutes passed in silence, warm, fragile, intimate. Eventually her breathing softened, turning delicate and rhythmic. She had fallen asleep. Charles looked at her, really looked at her, her head on his shoulder, her face relaxed, her curls brushing the collar of his shirt. He lifted a hand, stopping just inches from her cheek. He didn't touch her. He didn't dare. But he whispered anyway, voice cracking with truth he could no longer hide. "Why does pretending feel like the most real thing in my life?" And the night swallowed his confession whole. 3 months passed, yet it never felt like 3 months. Time had been slipping through their fingers, disguised as stolen glances, lingering touches, and soft moments that were never meant to last. What was supposed to be a deal, a performance, had become something that lived quietly beneath their skin. They attended charity galas arm in arm, smiling for the cameras, whispering things only they could hear. They hosted dinners at the Douglas estate, her hand resting naturally in his, as though it belonged there. They walked the hallways of the Douglas Empire offices side by side, his palm at the small of her back, guiding her as if it was instinct, as if it was home. The chemistry wasn't something they pretended. It was something they endured. There were late evenings in Charles's penthouse where she curled up on the couch beside him, reviewing sketches while he reviewed contracts. Sometimes she fell asleep on his shoulder, his pulse unsteady at the weight of her body leaning into him. Sometimes he cooked for her, simple meals, nothing fancy, because he discovered she liked her comfort food more than gourmet perfection. Once she walked into his home office late at night and found him asleep at his desk. She placed a blanket over him, brushing a hand through his hair without thinking. His eyes had fluttered open, soft and vulnerable. "Stay," he whispered. She had. That was when pretending started to hurt. By the end of the 3rd month, the facade had become so flawlessly real that even Douglas Sr., the hardest man Charles knew, began to soften every time he looked at them. At the final board evaluation dinner, the patriarch lifted his glass with slow, deliberate pride. "To my son," he announced, his voice firm despite age, "and to the woman who has brought warmth into this family." Rachel stiffened in her seat. Charles's hand reached for hers beneath the table, gripping it gently, grounding her. After the dinner, Douglas Sr. requested a private word with Rachel. They stepped into a quiet hallway overlooking the shimmering Las Vegas night. The air hummed softly, the city pulsing beneath them. Rachel clasped her hands nervously as the older man studied her, his eyes sharp but not unkind. "You're a good woman," he finally said, his tone quiet but firm. "And you've given my son something I've hoped he'd find for years. Something real." Her breath caught. "Sir, we—" He held up a hand, stopping her. "I don't need explanations or labels. I've watched him light up in ways I haven't seen in decades. I've seen the life you've breathed into him, even in the smallest moments." His voice softened. "Thank you for being the reason he smiles again." Her heart clenched. She looked down, ashamed and overwhelmed. "I didn't plan any of this." "Plans fail," he said gently. "But real feelings, they don't." He didn't know it, but his words had just shaken the ground beneath her. The next morning, Douglas Sr. called a full board meeting. Rachel wasn't supposed to be there, but Charles had asked her to come. He liked having her beside him. It steadied him. It made him feel enough. Everyone rose when the patriarch entered. His cane tapped sharply against the marble floor as he took his place at the head of the table. "As of today," he announced, "my son is reinstated as the rightful heir to lead the Douglas Empire." The room erupted in applause. Rachel looked at Charles, and Charles looked at her. There was pride in his eyes, yes, relief, accomplishment, but something deeper flickered beneath it, something he never dared say out loud. She smiled for him, but the smile hurt, because for the first time, she realized this was the end of their deal. Her role was complete. The arrangement had served its purpose. He had everything he needed now, and she was just the woman he hired to stand beside him. When the meeting ended, she tried to slip out quietly, heart pounding against her ribs. But Charles caught her in the hallway. "Hey, where are you going?" he asked, slightly breathless, as if he'd been searching for her. "I'm leaving," she whispered. He blinked. "Leaving? Why?" She looked up at him with eyes that wavered, begging him silently to say something. Anything that would give her permission to stay. That would tell her she meant more than a temporary solution. But he didn't understand. He was still living in the glow of accomplishment, unaware of the storm building inside her. "It's over, Charles." "What's over?" She swallowed. "The deal. The 3 months." Her voice trembled. "You got what you wanted. Your father reinstated you." He stepped closer. "Rachel, wait." "That's not..." She cut him off before he could finish. I wish you wanted me for real." His breath left him. His world tilted. His lips parted in shock, in helplessness, in a confession he hadn't prepared to make. But she didn't give him the chance. She walked away with quiet footsteps, with a quiet whisper, with a heart that felt like it was breaking open inside her chest. And Charles, the man who had faced billion-dollar crises, stood frozen in the hallway, powerless, shattered, watching the only woman who ever mattered disappear. He didn't move for a long time. He couldn't. Her words echoed inside him, clawing at everything he had kept buried. "I wish you wanted me for real." God, he wanted her more than he'd ever wanted anything. From the first drunken kiss in that bar, from the night she fell asleep in his arms, from every soft smile she gave him, unaware of how deeply it pierced his chest. He pressed a hand against his face, shaking, realizing with a sharp, painful clarity that he had loved her from the beginning. He had loved her quietly, helplessly, dangerously. But he never said it. He never showed it. He hid behind the arrangement because he was terrified. What if she laughed? What if she thought it was another deal? What if she thought he was trying to secure his inheritance? What if she didn't feel the same? The fear had strangled him, and now fear had cost him the woman he loved. Douglas Sr. found him hours later in his office, sitting in the dark, staring at nothing. "You look like hell," the old man muttered. Charles didn't answer. His father leaned heavily on his cane, studying him. "Your inheritance is back in your hands. Why do you look like you've lost everything?" Charles swallowed hard. "Because I have. It's Rachel." Douglas Sr.'s eyes sharpened. "You didn't lose your inheritance, son, but you lost the woman who made you come alive." Those words cracked something deep inside Charles. He lowered his head into his hands. "I love her." Silence, then very softly, "Then go get her." Charles left the building without telling anyone where he was going. He walked through the warm Las Vegas night, passing neon lights, ringing slot machines, people laughing and cheering around him, but all he saw was her. Her smile, her eyes, her pain. He searched every place he could think of. The bar where they first met, the diner where she laughed so hard she snorted, the boutique district where she shopped for fabric when she needed inspiration, nothing, but he didn't stop. Not when his feet ached, not when the desert wind picked up, not when the strip buzzed around him like chaos. He kept walking, breath heavy, heart pounding, whispering her name like a prayer. Because he wasn't going to lose her, not now, not after loving her in silence for so long. Not when his entire world was now shaped around the thought of her. Tonight he would find her. Tonight he would tell her everything. Tonight he would stop pretending. And with one last breath, he stepped back into the Las Vegas night, searching for the woman he couldn't live without. The Las Vegas skyline stretched endlessly, glittering beneath a midnight sky. Neon lights reflected off the glass facades of towering hotels, and the hum of the city pulsed faintly beneath the calm of the rooftops. Charles stood on one of the highest terraces, his back to the city, hands trembling, jaw tight, eyes wet with quiet desperation. He had found her. Not in a boutique, not in a bar, not in her studio where memories of her laughter lingered. He had found her here alone. Standing at the edge of the rooftop, her silhouette illuminated by the soft glow of the city. She seemed smaller somehow, vulnerable. She wasn't waiting for anyone. She was just being. Rachel's hair fell in loose curls over her shoulders, her fingers clutching the railing. She was staring down at the streetlights below, tears glinting on her cheeks in the neon glow. The wind tugged gently at her dress, but she didn't notice. She was crying quietly, almost whispering to herself, words lost in the night. It was all just business. He doesn't need me. I was just part of the deal. Charles's chest ached at the sight. Every step he had taken to find her had been worth it. And yet, seeing her like this, their arrangement over, and her heart breaking because of it, made him feel like he'd failed completely. He stepped closer, voice low, almost trembling. Rachel. Her head shot up, her eyes shimmering with tears locked onto him. Charles, He held up a hand, cutting her off. No, let me say this first. He swallowed, heart hammering. He had rehearsed 1,000 different speeches, none of which seemed adequate. So he threw caution aside, letting the truth tumble from him raw and unfiltered. I can't let you walk away thinking any of this was pretend, thinking I just needed a woman to fulfill some contract. Rachel, I've loved you since the first moment you kissed me, since that ridiculous, reckless, drunken kiss. I fantasized about you when I was alone, when I should have been working. I imagined holding you close, feeling your warmth, the curve of your body pressed against mine, the taste of your lips. And I hated myself for thinking it, because I was supposed to be professional, detached, untouchable, and yet. He paused, shivering despite the warm desert air. And yet every part of me wanted you. Every part of me needs you. You made me feel alive again, Rachel. Alive for the first time in years. You made me laugh. You made me care. You made me want things I'd forgotten were even possible. And I was too cowardly to tell you, because I was terrified you'd think it was just another arrangement. But it wasn't, it never was. Not for a second. Her tears fell freely now, but she didn't step back. She listened, letting every word crash over her. He inhaled sharply, stepping closer. I didn't fall in love with the woman who pretended to be mine. I fell in love with the woman who kissed me when she didn't even know I needed saving. The woman who saw me when no one else did. The woman who made me believe I could be loved, truly loved, without condition. Her lips trembled, her voice barely audible. Charles. He shook his head, taking both her hands in his, gripping them so tightly he could feel her pulse racing against his. I've never lied to you, Rachel. Not in my heart, not ever, and I don't want another second of pretending. Not another day. I can't imagine life without you. Not a single day. The wind caught her hair again, and she brushed it from her face, nodding slowly through tears. He swallowed hard, lowering himself carefully to one knee. The city lights reflected off his sharp features, eyes glimmering with desperation and love. His hands shook as he opened a small velvet box, revealing the simplest, most elegant ring. Rachel Anderson, he said, voice breaking with unspoken emotion. This isn't a contract. This isn't pretense. I don't want anything fake. I want you. I want us. I want the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me? She covered her mouth, crying openly now, shaking her head in disbelief and joy. This time no pretending. No pretending, he whispered, standing slowly to cup her face in his hands. Not ever again. She leaned into him, letting herself feel the weight of his truth. Her fingers traced the sharp line of his jaw down his neck, finding the place where her heart felt safest. Then yes, she whispered back, voice cracking. Yes, Charles, forever, for real this time. He pressed his lips to hers, soft at first, then with the intensity of everything they had been holding back for months. Their kiss wasn't just passion. It was relief, longing, apology, and promise all at once. The wedding wasn't grandiose. It didn't need to be. Intimate, raw, emotional, that was all that mattered. It took place in a small garden atop a hotel terrace, soft light strung above them, a light breeze tugging at her dress, scented by the faint perfume of desert blooms. The sky was streaked with twilight purples and oranges, the city sprawling beneath them in glittering glory. Rachel wore a simple gown, flowing and elegant, her hair softly curled, eyes shimmering with tears. She was radiant, like everything he never realized he deserved. Charles's suit was tailored perfectly, but he didn't care about perfection now. His eyes were fixed entirely on her, seeing every little detail, the curve of her lips, the soft arch of her brows, the way she shivered slightly in the evening air. He could barely breathe without her in the same space. When the officiant asked, "Do you take each other?" Charles interrupted, his voice trembling, raw and vulnerable. "I do. Rachel, I vow to love you in truth and honesty, in every moment, in every breath. I vow to hold you when life crushes us, to celebrate with you when life lifts us, and to never ever pretend that I don't need you, because I do, more than I ever knew I could need anyone. You are my first thought, my last thought, and every thought in between. You make me alive, and I promise to spend the rest of my life making you feel loved, cherished and safe." Rachel's tears fell freely, but she smiled through them. "And I vow to love you, Charles, to trust you, to hold you, to laugh with you, to cry with you, and to let you in fully without hesitation. I promise to never doubt the truth we've found. I promise this is forever, my heart, my soul, my life, yours." When he kissed her, it wasn't ceremonial. It was a collision of months of yearning, of fear, of desire. Their lips met with the gravity of every unspoken thought, every stolen touch, every soft word shared in darkness. Her hands slid around his neck, pulling him close, his arms wrapped around her waist, holding her as though letting go was impossible. The city lights reflected in her tears, glittering like tiny stars across her cheeks. He pressed his forehead to hers, breathing in the scent of her hair, the warmth of her skin. 3 months, he whispered. 3 months of pretending became forever. And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt that. Rachel smiled through her tears. "A dare, Charles. A stupid, drunken dare brought us here." He laughed softly, brushing a thumb across her cheek. "The best dare I've ever accepted, and I'd take it 1,000 times again if it meant ending up with you." They stood there, bodies pressed close, letting the city hum beneath them. For once, nothing was business, nothing was pretense, nothing was fear. There was only them. The night sky stretched above, endless and promising. Their fingers entwined, hearts beating in tandem. They stepped into a forever that had begun with a simple, reckless kiss and ended in a love that was raw, real, and irrevocable. 1 year later, their life was fuller than either had imagined. The house hummed with the soft coos and tiny cries of their newborn twins. Late nights were long, filled with rocking lullabies and whispered conversations in the quiet glow of the nursery light. Charles watched Rachel cradle one baby, her face radiant with exhaustion and joy, while he held the other close, feeling the tiny weight of their fingers curling around his own. Every small milestone, first smiles, soft gurgles, the way they settled against her chest, was a reminder of how far they had come. The empire, the social appearances, the pressures of expectations, all of it paled beside this fragile, perfect new life they had created together. At the end of the day, when the twins slept, they would sit together in the nursery, leaning against each other, hands entwined, hearts beating in quiet synchronization. Charles whispered softly, "We made this together," and she would smile, feeling the truth of every word. Their life had begun with a dare, a pretense and a kiss, but now it was theirs entirely. Messy, imperfect, raw, and wholly real. And that brings us to the end of their journey. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more emotional love stories. Share it with someone who still believes in true love, and tap the bell so you never miss a story that moves your soul. Until next time, keep believing in the magic of real love. With a heart full of gratitude, Vintage Mike Tales.